In pediatric behavioural assessment, two clinicians can test the same child and come to two very different clinical conclusions. And that's not just a difference in style, and it can lead to a difference in the overall clinical outcome. The reason for this is quite simple. We're not measuring hearing in a perfectly controlled system. We're interpreting behaviour, and that means that clinical judgment is built into every step of the process. Ultimately, it's unavoidable, but it also means that there is a real risk of inconsistency if that judgment isn't supported by clear structure and guidelines. And when method varies, the results will inevitably vary too. Professional guidance has been highlighting this for many years. Both UK and international guidance emphasises the importance of consistency, reliability, and using multiple sources of information rather than relying on a single, potentially uncertain result. This is especially important in paediatrics, where assessments can often be left incomplete. A child might not tolerate certain parts of the test, they might lose attention, and we might not get the full picture in one single appointment. Yet, at the end of the appointment, we still have to make a decision about what happens next. Do we reassure the parents? Do we arrange for review? Or do we refer? Or do we discharge them from further follow-up? Those decisions inevitably carry risk. And we've seen from major service reviews in the UK that if practice isn't consistent and doesn't follow national guidelines, that risk becomes very real, with examples of delayed diagnosis and missed opportunities for early intervention. The challenge is that inconsistency rarely looks that dramatic in the moment. It often comes down to small decisions, how we interpret a particular response, how confident we feel in the result, or how we handle that uncertainty that we have. But those small decisions can lead to a very different outcome for the child. So this isn't about removing clinical judgment, because we can't, and we definitely shouldn't. It's about supporting that judgment with a consistent framework so that our decisions are based on a reliable process rather than individual variation. And that's what we're going to focus on next, where variability actually comes from and how we can control it in practice. So to bring this to life, let's walk through a scenario. This is Lucy. Lucy has been referred for a hearing assessment due to concerns around her speech and language development. There is no significant history mentioned in the referral, no family history of hearing loss, no recurrent ear infections, and otherwise she's generally well. Now, we're going to follow Lucy through two different clinical pathways. Same child, same history, same reason for referral, but two different clinicians. In one pathway, she sees Dr. Thorpe. In another, she sees Dr. Loken. And I want you to pay attention to how small differences in approach can lead to very different outcomes. Lucy arrives to the clinic with her parent. She's settled in with some toys whilst the clinician takes history. Dr. Thorpe proceeds with visual reinforcement audiometry. They obtain sound field responses at 35 dB at 1 kHz and a minimum response level of 25 dB at 4 kHz. However, Lucy quickly loses interest and stops responding consistently. Headphones are attempted, but unfortunately this is not tolerated. Bone conduction is also attempted, but Lucy becomes incredibly distressed by this, so testing is ultimately discontinued. In Dr. Loken's clinic, they take a different approach and attempt performance audiometry. Lucy conditions reasonably well, and minimum response levels of 25 dB are obtained at 1 and 4 kHz. Again, Lucy loses interest at this point, and testing cannot be progressed any further. Both clinicians attempt otoscopy, but Lucy is quite distressed and resistant, so the view is a little limited. Tympanometry is also attempted. Lucy again is very resistant, and both clinicians obtain these noisy, low-confidence traces. Now we come to the interpretation. Dr. Thorpe explains that responses suggest better hearing at the high frequencies with slightly elevated responses at 1 kHz. They highlight the limitations of the test and recommends a follow-up for 3 months' time. Dr. Loken also explains the limitations of the assessment. However, they really emphasize the responses that were obtained at 25 dB at the frequencies tested and provide further reassurance based upon this. Ultimately, a follow-up is arranged for 12 months' time. So, for the same child, we've ended up with two different clinical messages and two very different management plans. The question is, where did these differences come from? And more importantly, how do we reduce this level of variation? That's what we're going to explore in this session. So keep Lucy in mind, we'll be coming back to her later. But for now, let's move on and take a look at some of the key sources of variability in practice and how we can manage them.